Our next discussion is Dr. James Garrett, who has a Juris Doctorate as well as a Ph.D. and was an active participant with S.N.C.C and C.O.R.E in the civil rights and black power struggle of the 1960s. He has been recognized as a principal organizer of the Black Student Union movement, the development of Black and Third World ethnic studies, and as a major contributor to the Black arts movement. Dr. Garrett is featured in the 2016 award-winning documentary, Agents for Change, that profiles militant activism by Black students and change agents in the U.S. For more than 40 years, Dr. Garrett has been involved in nation building and humanitarian projects, most recently in Vietnam and Namibia, Africa. His continuing community activism includes support for cooperative business and housing projects in the Bay Area and across the nation. Would you give a warm welcome to Dr. Garrett?
First, I thank Dr. Karenga for the introduction. We've known each other for a couple of years. I'm 55. His brother was one of my teachers at Jefferson High School.
Is that right?
Right, Cheston was one of my teachers. So I go back with the family a little longer. See, I don't talk about it very much, but I've known these folks since the Laverne Park struggle back in the day.
That's right.
Second is Dr. Tasco, who dragged me kicking and screaming. Got me last night, said that she wanted me to come up and join with her in this process. Good. She's a shot caller, so so she's come. And I have deep respect for her. I'm going to do my best to do this as quickly as possible. I will try to raise a couple of points. The first is the kind of quick process on how what we're talking about here began. I mean, there are primary documents. People are writing books on the history of ethnic studies at San Francisco State, Third World Studies, and Black Studies, but don't have the primary documents. Before I would write anything about it, I have to have the primary document. So I spent about 20 years gathering the primary documents. I mean, I have the documents that the library doesn't have on the development of this process. So let me try to do it very quickly. First, Black Studies, which was the initial piece, we did not come together under the banner of the Black Student Union to develop Black Studies. That was not the purpose. Our fundamental purpose was that we sat around at what was then a little puny library here at San Francisco State, a group of us, 2/3 of whom were women, Black women, and engaged in the discussion about what is the best thing that we could do to push what was going on in the world a little bit more forward. And what we decided to do was to focus on bringing as large a number of Black students or Black youth onto the campus, use this campus as a base to build cadre. We call it build cadre. In those days, now they call it change agent, and they'll call it problem solve, any kind of soften it. It's like diversity, that you keep softening it up until it becomes nothing at all. But we were trying to build cadre. We wanted to bring people on the campus, give them some basic training of a way of looking at the world and some basic skills, and then transmit them out into our communities, because we were about, in those days, creating a circumstance where we had self-determination. That is, we were about transforming the social order, at least to the extent that Black people could make decisions that affect their own lives. That was a narrow kind of perspective that we had. And then we made created a contradiction. We ended up bringing on about 150 students, immediately got them involved in tutorial programs and all kinds of things, took over the work study program that was here so that we could pay the students so they could go out and engage in work. We hooked them up into programs in the community, and you know what they discovered? That many of the young people, Black young people, I mean, they worked south of Market, they worked in Chinatown, because we had a broader spectrum. We had white students, we had Latinx students, we had Asian students. Little by little were coming into this process. But they discovered that, at least among the black students, the youth had a higher level of black consciousness than they did. So it was creating a certain kind of crisis in that James Brown was doing more work to raise the consciousness of the people than we were. And so the students who thought themselves as being, they were going from transition from Negro to black, ran into these students, and some of them were having nervous breakdowns. They were going into crises. They wanted discipline for the students, and for the kids that they were tutoring, because they had the skills training on one hand, but the students, the children, had the consciousness. And they used their consciousness the same way the adults, the older students use their discipline, and the kids won out. Because they just walked away. So, how do we come to grips with this? This Black Studies in its early terms was a problem-solving piece. It was a way to address a fundamental problem of the lack of consciousness and understanding of the students that we're bringing on the campus. We're bringing them from Hunters Point, we're bringing them from Fillmore, and they were living the consciousness, but they were the better class of Negro. They were the better in the sense that many of them, although they had gangsters in their family, they themselves had been a little bit elevated out of that for about a minute. So our thing was, now how do we come to grips with that? But then you have to draw on things, and here comes the epistemology, the study of knowledge. Some of us had been involved in the movement, like I had been involved in S.N.C.C since the early 60s, and C.O.R.E, and had been in this atmosphere of people who I just thought they were incredible. I mean, they were studying Du Bois and Fanon and all this other stuff, and I was a sponge. I didn't know any better, so I learned as much as I could. I was involved in, as Dr. Karenga would recognize, in working Manchester Avenue in the Emmanuel United Church of Christ and Avalon Community Center, working with young people in those communities before I went south. So I had a history of that. And when I say that I was in Vietnam before, in the North Vietnam, before U.S. soldiers were involved in the serious thing. I was in North Vietnam in 1965, in the North, with Ho Chi Minh.
All right.
Because I was involved in the movement. See, I have a history of it, because the movement had helped me to be involved in it. So I went to the campus with the prospect of trying to build a model of a black student movement on a predominantly white college campus. That was the purpose. That was the purpose. No career, there was no careerism, because we were supposed to be killed as soon as we did this stuff. There's no career outside of struggle. So how do you construct then the next stage? In order to deal with the problem, that's what creates Black Studies. Black Studies did not, Nathan Hare arrived in late January of 1968. Black Studies, the Institute for Black Study and Community Work was put together and submitted in December of 1966. That's when Black Studies begins. The Academic Senate begins to consider it in December of '66. And we were negotiating with them with Summerskill as our support, and people like Cornell Persico, who's a student leader, a white student leader who was very much in support of what we were doing. We had begun to negotiate pushing this along. At the same time, there was the building of that next sector, Third World Liberation Front. So the others saw what we were doing and rode that horse. They followed it, they nudged it along. I remember that the brothers and sisters who ended up on Alcatraz, right? We would go over to Oakland and work with them at that, I don't know what it's called, the Indian Center over there. I don't know if it's still called that.
Or Friendship House.
Yeah, we would go and work with them. Those of that first generation ended up being the people who went Alcatraz. So our notion was you build coalitions, you work closely with everybody, and you place yourself at the center of struggle very quickly now. So that's that motion. Now the epistemology, how do you get to it? Well, who do we use as our reference point? Of course, Du Bois, you got to use Du Bois as a reference point. So you had Du Bois and you had Garvey and you had Paul Robeson, and at that time, you had the popular culturalists, James Baldwin, etc. Those were people who we were trying to, and I'm telling you, we were studying day and night. We would study at night in order to run political education piece in the day. So that's one part of Black Studies. Then the other part of it, we laid it out as a 60-40 process. 60% of Black Studies will be on the campus perpetually for this period of time. 40%, no less than 40% of all the resources of Black study and work would be in communities. That doesn't exist, this doesn't exist at least for Africana studies today, not at San Francisco State. That would mean that the professors would spend 40% of their time in the community, being a part of the community education process. Now, I may be lying. If you tell me I'm wrong, I don't mind criticism. I'm not that kind of My thing is that if that was the base of it, a minimum of 40%, the Academic Senate of San Francisco State accepted that piece. The Academic Senate, by fall of 1967, said, yes, you're going to go across the board. Your Institute for Black Studies or your Black Studies department will go across the board in two ways. One is it will base itself in the communities. And number two, it reaches into not only philosophy and history. These are fundamental. You don't have any teachers. My big problem with ethnic studies, I'm not sure all of the professors are themselves prepared and locked into that understanding. Some of them are careerists, 1 or 2, maybe 1 or 2%. Are careerists. But that was what you had to be steeped in this work. You have to be locked into this work so that you spend 40% of your time there in the community at a minimum, so that the students would be flowing in and out. There was this transactional relationship between students and community until they're one with each other. And at some point, the institution, the academy, becomes irrelevant. And instead, what happened in San Francisco was that the community was ethnically cleansed, okay? The community was ethnically cleansed rather than the campus. We wanted to have the campus academically cleansed. That's the purpose. To the extent that ethnic studies doesn't serve that purpose, whatever it is discussed, and I've heard some good things here, whatever it is discussed, there's a corruption to it. And the corruption is, when you say, we are for the purpose of the community, how does a faculty manifest that? How does administrators manifest that? How do the directors and chairs manifest that? If you're for the community, then every day, where are you? You're in the community. Thank you very much.